Hello everybody, it's Tahir here from Odeberg Permaculture Farm, and in this module we are going to take a deep dive into the permaculture concept itself and define permaculture succinctly and precisely. Now that we've got the background that we need to understand the ecological foundation of permaculture design and the context that permaculture arose from, and the different influences and threads that wove together to give birth to permaculture, we can now start to really get into the essence of what permaculture really is and start looking at the next level of permaculture, start to touch on the principles and dive further in. Okay, so let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello everybody. So what we're going to be looking at now is defining the permaculture concept. So up to this point we've kind of been setting the scene. We've been focusing on the kind of foundational aspects of permaculture, where it has arisen from, what it's responding to, the history of permaculture and its ethical framework that it arises from, and this has now given us the constituent parts to go deeper in and actually define it very specifically. And what we're going to be looking for here in this presentation are core concepts, core ideas, because if you can understand those and hold on to them, then it's easy to actually fit the rest of the aspects that make up the permaculture definition onto it. And so, from a broad contextual perspective, permaculture is the design of a regenerative future. Now, so by applying regenerative design into the present moment, we ensure a future that is regenerative. And Buckminster Fuller had a saying that I really like, and it is a question and answer. How do we predict the future? We design it. And this is the beauty and power of permaculture. And so in time, what we will see is permaculture will become the organizing principle behind all of civilization, a natural civilization, because if we're going to evolve into the future, we need to synergize with the ecological pattern. And our future really as the human species depends on doing this. I have been living in nature for a long time now, and one of the things I've come to understand is that nature is not under threat. Nature is resilient, nature is responsive, and nature always comes back better than it was before. The concern is more whether we will prevail. This is the question. So let's have a look at it now. So when somebody comes to you and says, what is permaculture? This is the essence of it. Permaculture is the conscious design. It is a design system. Okay? Very important core concept. Permaculture is the conscious design of human living environments. Very broad, human living environments. Okay, and so these human living environments that we consciously design are reflections of the ecological principle that underlies nature. And we've looked into this in quite a lot of detail, and it's well represented by the fractal cauliflower here. Okay, now this principle, this ecological principle, is applied to all aspects of the human endeavor, every aspect of our existence here on earth. from farming through to law, to create and attune. So we are creating and tuning the new civilization that we are using permaculture design to establish into the greater universal system, into the big cosmic expanse. So, we know it is a design system. It's not a system of farming or gardening, but rather a system of designing ecosystemic human life support systems. We're just repeating and reinforcing this very, very important aspect of it, the ecosystemic. And this is what defines permaculture apart from any other approach. At its heart, it is ecosystemic. It's a cultivated ecology, and we'll look at this in a little bit more detail. And fundamentally, it's a harmonious synergy. Okay, but the important term here is a synergy of landscape and people by design. So we bring in humanity together with landscapes in a completely harmonious manner. What is its function? So what is it here to do? Well, it provides our food, energy, shelter, okay, fundamental, what I call liberty resources. Food, energy, shelter, and other material and non-material needs. So basically everything that we as human beings need to thrive on the planet. So it's applied to all aspects of life, not just land use. And its function is to repurpose society into the ecosystemic. And I really like this image here because it just juxtaposes a well-designed, well-integrated permaculture system with the kind of green desert landscapes that we are used to in most suburban and rural contexts. And within this compact little ecosystem that is being created, we see the fundamental aspects of what people require to be self-reliant. So how does it do this? By the application of ethics, okay, which we've been through, the application of design principles that we are going to be heading into, and the application of methods, okay, into an ecosystemic regenerative pattern that is based on the laws of nature. So we've got three things. We've got ethics, principles, and methods applied into a particular pattern language that is based on the laws of nature. And the result is a system of cultivating regenerative human ecosystems. And so we become, as a culture and a society, ecosystemic. And these ecosystems which we design are harmonized with the natural patterns or ecosystem, but not only necessarily ecosystem, but human patterns of place. So it's about a synergy of two pattern languages, two pattern archetypes integrate. And the function of the synergy is to generate abundance for all life in all its forms indefinitely. So that brings in the ethics. Okay? Recognizing and celebrating and utilizing the intrinsic worth of all things. All right, and we can create infinite abundance. The lack of abundance on planet Earth has got nothing to do with overpopulation and everything to do with how we extract, process, distribute, and utilize the resources of the planet. So permaculture is a cultivated ecosystem as opposed to a natural ecosystem which is arisen from the process of nature. It is an ecosystem that we cultivate. And this cultivated ecosystem serves human needs. It puts us at the center. And it regenerates the social and natural order at the same time. So it has a regenerative effect on human culture and on the ecosystem processes. And this is the unique aspect of permaculture, as I mentioned earlier. It is the ecosystemic that defines it apart from everything else. And it's this ecosystemic patterning that enables permaculture to harmonize humanity and nature. It creates a human life support ecosystem pattern that can integrate or fit into the receptors that exist in nature. And so what we are ultimately doing is we are cultivating oneness. It is about bringing about integration between all things, not separation. And this process of integration or cultivating oneness is nothing new. You know, we as human beings are not creating anything. We are unable to create. All we do is just rearrange the basic building blocks of life into infinite pattern variations. It's a creative process, but ultimately we are taking what is already here. And we are looking at generating a system that can provide for its needs from within itself through a synergy between all the parts that make up the whole. And we're going to understand this in a lot more detail once we get into the nitty-gritty of the permaculture principles. And the end result is self-regulation, which is the holy grail of permaculture. The system can provide for its own needs from within itself by virtue of its infinite engagement and interaction with the whole of creation, that exchange, that synergistic exchange between the system as a whole and the greater natural human order, and between the parts within the system itself. And so if we look at any aspect of the system and we remove it apart, it becomes meaningless. Its meaning is generated by its relationship to all things around it. And so it's this integration that allows for self-regulation, and we will come to understand this very well. And as we've seen, this process of self-regulation is right at the heart of natural systems. And here's a very interesting image. It looks like a natural forest, but it isn't. It is a food forest. But because it's been designed using the principles that underlie the natural order, the expression of it is exactly the same in pattern as natural systems. Okay, and so this enables the connectivity across the spectrum. And this allows for syntropy to function. It allows for the process of efficiency in exchange that allows for more energy and resources to become available to support more life, more complexity. And that is the grail of permaculture, the system of self-regulation. We do not need externalized inputs. We do not need to sustain it through our own technologies, and we do not need it to sustain itself through our means. If we leave permaculture systems alone once they are established, they should evolve indefinitely. They may become less neat and organized from a human perspective, but they will go on forever if properly arranged. And so what we are doing with these cultivated ecosystems is we are using ecological patterning as the vector for design. Okay? They are the foundational structure of our principles, strategies, and methods. And permaculture design has a design process that we're going to learn about. This is why we are here. This is why we are doing this course. And this design process is a reflection of the underlying mathematics and order in nature. And when we go into ecosystem understanding, we're going to go into this in a lot of detail, and it's very exciting, it's fascinating, it's my favorite subject, and we can see this pattern here expressed in a wide range of natural forms. And so ultimately, permaculture is a naturally mimicking system. It's a unified field, what we term the oneness of life. And permaculture is cultivated nature, so it is really the science of cultivating oneness. This is how we bring everything together. This is how we create a oneness of human culture in synergy with nature. This is how we bring together and unite humanity. Not by political slogan, but by ecosystemic design. And what we are essentially doing is we are attuning civilization seamlessly back into the natural order. I keep repeating this, but it is fundamental to understand this. And so the idea is that by doing that, we are going to harness the forces of nature to our advantage instead of fighting and suppressing them. And so in the natural order are the laws and organizing principles and patterns of existence. And we are too an expression of this pattern, and we see it. And once we become more familiar with the pattern language, we'll be able to recognize this fundamental pattern in all things, the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence. And so permaculture expresses this pattern through design. Okay, by a harmonic pattern application into the existing pattern of the natural order of place. We're not imposing pattern. We're not creating a pattern that we like and imposing it. We are discovering the appropriate pattern to apply so that we can find synergy. This is the objective. And so permaculture offers the vision of a new ecosystemic world that is in tune with natural law. And this is what it would look like. I mean, it's a really interesting artist's impression, and many of you may have encountered it on the net. But it totally redesigns the spatial pattern language of our settlements. Everything looks different. The world becomes unrecognizable. And once you practice permaculture for a while, this is what you see everywhere you go. You see this potential. And then when you measure the potential up against what is actually happening, it's very revealing, because it shows you the insanity of the design of our current system. And so what we're going to look at next is how this is done through the application of permaculture principles. Okay? And understanding these permaculture principles is as important as understanding the ethics. And so when we take the permaculture principles, and they're very specific, and these principles have their roots in system dynamics of nature. They are a reflection of the natural order and the characteristics of natural systems, which we looked at in the permaculture context. And so what Mollison and Holmgren did is they actually understood these laws and patterns, and they developed them into a set of principles. And these principles are applied, okay? And if they are applied, we will result in an ecosystemic civilization. Under any context and under any condition where the support of life is possible. And there are certain areas one shouldn't be applying permaculture design to, unless it's really for restoration purposes, and those are your most inhospitable environments where people have no place living. They're just there as visitors, you know, the Arctic, Antarctic, the center of the Sahara Desert, places like that. Okay, so it's not just about farming, it is about the design of an ecosystemic civilization through the application of ethics and principles and methods. Okay, and the ethics and principles are universally applied. Doesn't matter where you are. The techniques and methods are context specific, and we're really going to have a good look into this. Okay, and so what we have now are 12 broad principles and many minor ones. Okay, and these minor ones are iterations of the 12 basic principles. And these principles are the next layer in the unfolding process of permaculture design. So we had ethics at the core, and then ethics govern our attitude, behavior. It's a way of measuring and assessing our systems. Principles are the tools we use in application. All right, and they inform design processes, and they arise from ethics and are framed by ethics and governed by ethics. And these principles are ecosystemic, so their application ensures a cultivated ecosystem that will support life in all its forms abundantly and infinitely on into the future. All right, and it's context specific. So when we take these principles and we apply them into an environment, they are always consistently there. We don't apply some and not others. We take all 12 of them and we focalize them into the context through design. And the result is self-regulation. Okay? So no matter where you are, whether you are in Scandinavia or in Uganda or in Australia or in China, the principles are universal. They are applied into the unique context, and the unique context demands very unique sets of techniques, unique elements. So we are not looking at the specific elements like plants or animals or particular techniques or methodologies. Those are very context specific, all right? But the ethics and the principles are applied regardless of context. And if they are applied properly, we will result in self-regulation. Okay? So we have this concept of permaculture, and we know what we're doing with it. Okay? And we know that it's ingrained in ethics. And how we apply the system of design is governed by the 12 principles of permaculture. And whether it's a small scale system, like you see here, in an urban context, or a large scale system, like you see here on an agricultural, commercial level, the principles and the application is the same. And if you go into these systems and you walk around, you will see these principles embodied in every single aspect of it. All right. And that is the beauty of the permaculture system. The principles are holographic. They are there to set up a pattern framework and pattern language that expresses itself or iterates itself into the locale, the unique context of place through a set of unique elements and a set of unique techniques. Okay. You will not be using the same techniques in a semi-desert environment like the Karoo as opposed to a wet, humid climate like Durban. Okay, different techniques and different elements. You're not growing bananas in the Karoo. All right, in the Karoo you're accumulating water. You're dealing with hardy elements. In Durban you are you are being cautious about water accumulation because there's a lot of it, and you are using soft elements, all right, because that is the nature of the climate. And so ethics and principles are applied regardless of context because they frame the design process, okay, and they define the concept of a cultivated ecosystem. But the techniques and methods and elements are unique to site. And so when Bill Mollison and David Holmgren set up permaculture, they worked with a set of principles that was generated by Bill Mollison, okay, and they proved to be very effective, and they still are, and there are people like Jeff Lawton, he uses Bill Mollison's permaculture principles, all right, and here they are, and some of them we still see in David Holmgren's principles, which we talked about in the history of permaculture, and some of David Holmgren's are new. They further elaborations. And then some of Bill Mollison's principles have been moved very specifically into the realm of the design process rather than the overall pattern framing process. Okay, and so you will see these coming up in the design process when we start to learn about them. But when we look at the David Holmgren permaculture principles, we will see that some of these are not there. They've been integrated into new iterations, or they've been shifted into the design process. But David Holmgren's 12 principles are based on Bill Mollison's, okay? And they've just an efficientizing of this. And so, as we saw in the previous presentation, Holmgren's principles were developed in 2002, all right? And they've become widely recognized as the kind of basis for permaculture design today. And this is what we're going to do next, is we're going to go through them systematically, define them really well for ourselves, and then once we understand them, we will be able to see how they express themselves into all the different aspects of permaculture design. Okay, and those aspects themselves are going to be subject to a specific presentation. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail now, but what we see here is David Holmgren's permaculture flower. And it is the journey we take in design that takes us through all the different aspects of human existence, where we apply design and repurpose them into the ecosystemic, okay? And they are redesigned by virtue of the application of the principles.